Machine guns spewed a hail of bullets into the crowd. Unarmed civilians were mowed down one after another, tumbling into the river. The water turned crimson with blood once again. This was no ordinary massacre. It was a sacrifice, trading Chinese lives to appease the souls of dead Japanese soldiers. The interpreter squeezed his eyes shut, unable to bear the sight. But Ito kept snapping photos with his camera, murmuring in sick admiration at how spectacular the scene was. The interpreter's wife and child were among those shot and killed. He had managed to secure exit passes for them, yet never got the chance to hand them over. In that moment, rivers of blood ceased to be a mere figure of speech. It became a horrifyingly literal testament to the Japanese army's bestial cruelty. The interpreter stared trembling at the bodies of his fallen compatriots, choking on his grief. He was completely oblivious that his own wife and child lay buried beneath that mountain of bloodied corpses. He had deluded himself into thinking that collaborating with the Japanese would keep his family safe. But the truth was, the Japanese never even regarded him as a human being. Now that we've recounted this massacre, let's return to that tiny photo studio. After Ikeda's death, Ito didn't bother to dig deeper into the incident. Instead, he paid a personal visit to the studio to inspect the developing equipment. The interpreter trailed closely behind him. As soon as they stepped inside, the interpreter marched straight up to Yushio, slammed the door shut, and slapped her hard across the face. This was the classic rhetoric of a coward's self-justification. He belittled the courage that others possessed as foolishness, so that his own spineless inaction might seem like rational prudence. Deep down, he'd secretly hoped Ikeda would be killed. But that didn't stop him from looking down on the soldier who'd done it. Because only by disparaging those who dared to fight and die could he cover up his own cowardice and envy. The fact that he lacked the guts to sacrifice himself. He dressed up his traitorous collaboration as a different way of saving lives, claiming he was just being a hero in his own right. But the harsh truth remained. He was aiding and abetting the invaders. True traitors rarely wave a collaborationist flag from day one. Their betrayal unfolds gradually, through a cycle of constant self-deception and rationalization, until they grind away their own moral bottom line entirely. He wasn't ignorant of how dirty his hands were. He simply chose to smash the mirror rather than confront the ugly truth that he was nothing but a traitor. To me, the most terrifying thing about this character isn't his evil. It's his ability to twist his own wrongdoing into something righteous in his mind. But then again, if you were trapped in this living hell, what would you do? War, however, never slows down for anyone's self-delusions. While the interpreter continued to comfort himself with his empty justifications, a wave of even harsher suspicion and purges was quietly closing in on the little photo studio. Ito had noticed that the equipment had been tampered with, but he said nothing. He just called in a professional to fix it, then pored over manuals to teach himself the art of photo developing. He had no intention of relying on Ah Chang anymore. Ito was a fast learner. Before long, he successfully developed a batch of photos on his own. Beneath the dim red light of the darkroom, he silently loaded bullets into his pistol. A murderous intent toward Ah Chang had already taken root in his heart. He summoned Ah Chang and ordered him to take down the old photos hanging on the wall. As Ah Chang set about the task, Ito stood behind him, drew his pistol, and aimed it directly at Ah Chang's back. The interpreter dared not intervene. A chill ran down Ah Chang's spine. But for all his posturing as a soldier, Ito was by nature a coward. He'd only ever worked as a military photographer. He had never actually killed anyone with his own hands. The sudden surge of nerves and fear made him hesitate. Seizing this split-second opportunity, Ah Chang turned and said he had a gift for Ito. He then pulled out an album filled with landscape photos of Nanjing that Ito had taken. Ah Chang had specially printed an extra copy just for him. This small gesture defused the crisis, if only temporarily. Even in the darkest of times, fleeting moments of genuine human connection can happen. And sometimes, those moments become the key to survival. Ito abandoned his plan to kill Ah Chang. True to his word, he handed over 2 exit passes. Instead of fleeing the city privately with the passes, Ah Chang and the interpreter returned to the cellar, where they showed the precious documents to old Jean and his family. Yushio suggested that since they were all bound by life and death, they should draw lots to decide who would get the chance to escape. Everyone readily agreed. Old Jean drew first. It was blank. His wife drew next, also blank. When their daughter pulled a slip of paper, there were characters written on it. She was the chosen one. Yushio's draw was blank too. It was obvious then, the other pass was in Ah Chang's hand. But he calmly held it out, offering this chance at survival to someone who had more to live for. This wasn't the act of a saint. It was a simple man, driven to the brink of despair, choosing to cling to a shred of dignity, even if it meant sacrificing his own life. Old Jean was overcome with gratitude, unable to put his thanks into words. He decided to send his wife and daughter out of the city first. He would find a way to reunite with their son later. Though his wife was heartbroken at the thought of separation, she knew this was their only hope. Before they left, mother and daughter messed up their hair and dirted their faces, making themselves look as unattractive as possible. They were terrified of being targeted and violated. The small group of survivors gathered in the photo studio and took a single group photo to remember each other by. Then old Jean unfurled a scroll painting for his daughter, a sweeping panorama of China's great rivers and mountains. The golden tiles and red walls of the Forbidden City in Beiping stood towering in the morning light, witness to the rise and fall of dynasties. The grand Western-style buildings of Tianjin's Quanai Bazaar rose high, a testament to a century of prosperity and bustle. The willow trees lining West Lake in Hangzhou rustled in the spring breeze, their ripples shimmering with gentle beauty. The city god temple in Shanghai was thick with the smoke of incense, where tradition and the clamor of everyday life coexisted harmoniously. The Yellow Crane Tower in Wuhan stood majestically on the banks of the Yangtze River, where the verses of the poet Cui Hao still echoed between its carved beams and painted rafters. The Great Wall snaked like a giant dragon across the mountains and valleys, every brick etched with the indomitable spirit of the Chinese nation.
爸爸叫过来的，这些叫什么？
大好侯赛，
寸土不让。
With their bundles and hearts full of hope, old Jin's wife and daughter set off. When they handed their exit passes to the soldiers at the checkpoint, the guards examined the documents closely, then pulled out a slip of paper to cross-check the serial numbers. After confirming the numbers matched, the soldiers suddenly dragged the two women away, forcing them into a side room. A sharp bayonet plunged straight into the mother's body. The child's screams were muffled by rough hands clamped over her mouth. She was dragged to a corner and violently assaulted. In the end, both mother and daughter were brutally raped and killed. In the face of absolute evil, any hope of survival based on the enemy's rules or mercy is nothing but a hollow illusion. The only path to freedom is not escape, it is resistance. The tragic deaths of old Jin's wife and daughter were part of a trap set by Ito. The moment he handed the passes to Ah Chang, he'd already sent the serial numbers to the checkpoint guards, ordering them to kill anyone who tried to use them. When Ito arrived at the checkpoint and discovered that the people who'd presented the passes were two unknown women instead of Ah Chang, he flew into a rage. He stormed back to the photo studio, grabbed Ah Chang by the collar, and roared at him, demanding to know who the women were. When Ah Chang remained silent, Ito punched him repeatedly, venting his fury at being deceived. He then burst into the darkroom, ransacking it frantically in search of the photo negatives, but came up empty-handed. Furious and frustrated, Ito turned to Kurashima and snarled that he could do whatever he wanted with the woman standing nearby. Kurashima instantly got the message. He unbuckled his belt and strode straight toward Yushio. The interpreter made a token effort to pull Kurashima back, but was easily shrugged off. That woman was his lover. Yushio clung desperately to the interpreter's sleeve, sobbing and begging for help. After a moment's hesitation, he finally mustered up his courage.
友達？咱们は犬だ！にも！